Welcome to Face to Face, connecting theater makers to the public, a program from the Legacy Theater and socialdistancetheater.org. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to have you on this episode of Face to Face because our guest today is Mr. Karl Gasteyer. Karl is everything. He's a playwright, he's an actor, he's a singer, he's a dancer, he's a choreographer, he's a director, he owned a theater company, he has sold out venues as large as Foxwoods and has played tours all up and down the United States. And he's also an educator. So he has so much to add to our discussion of what it is to be a professional in the performing arts, because he has worn all the hats and sometimes doing it in the fussy way, his entire professional career. So welcome, Karl.
Thank you.
So Karl, you grew up in Connecticut, right?
Yes. Well, I grew up in Connecticut, and then when I was 18, I went straight into the Navy and didn't go to college until after the Navy. So I left and went to Jacksonville, Florida, and on the John F. Kennedy, I was on an aircraft carrier for most of my time. And, so when we were on land, I would spend my time in Florida and then at sea on the Kennedy. Then went to Southern afterwards, and after that moved to New York and took classes at, various places, Broadway Dance and West Side Dance Project and T. Schreiber and stuff like that. And then I was working at the same time, always doing little tours and working in regional theaters, and yeah. So and then slowly moved into the producing, directing, choreographing part of my life, and then teaching. And I was an executive director for a while too.
That's true. At the Klein.
At the Klein, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a large and historic theater. That's right. You were executive director there. It's amazing. So before the Navy then, because I know a lot of your characters can be sourced from people you met in the Navy, which is wonderful. But start even before then. When did you know that you were a performer and that you possessed all of these talents to be? Because you're such a comedic actor. You have such a broad range of characters within you that just come out so effortlessly when others would, really have to work at it. So how did you learn this about yourself?
Well, that's a good question. We had a great theater teacher in high school, Robin Ganji. I think he's actually still teaching in Fairfield County somewhere. And he asked me to be in one of the high school productions. I think it was Egad, the Woman in White, and I played the grandpa. And and I had the voice and the character, and plugged my way through the show, and everybody said it was really funny. And I decided that I enjoyed it so much that I did the show the next year, which was Can't Take It With You. And I played the grandpa again in that show. So I was, kind of pigeonholed into grandpa parts in high school. And there were a few musical reviews I did too. So, there ain't nothing like a dame, that kind of stuff. That's one of the numbers I remember. But so I went to the Navy and I hated it and decided I wanted to do something that I liked. So when I got out, I went to school for theater.
That's great. And do you remember any of the shows you were in college?
College, I did a Gershwin review. We did the Royal Family. I was Mac and Mabel. That was one of my favorite roles. Let's see, some Andrew Lloyd Webber review kinds of things. Those are the ones that stick out, at least in my mind. Hamlet, I was in Hamlet. I was the ghost. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because the director envisioned the ghost being kind of like Darth Vader. So he gave me this, I literally wore the back part of a Darth Vader helmet, but we had this skeleton mask on the front. And they put a lot of effects on my voice. So I remember having a lot of fun, I am thy father's spirit. And they were using these octave changers and these effects that, made it sound really eerie. Which was a blast.
That's great. So you
Yeah.
graduate, you decide to move to Manhattan, and you start going to the general calls and that you would see in backstage.
Yeah. Well, so while I was in college, I started auditioning for things both in Connecticut and in New York, and I got cast a lot, and in paying jobs like in hair. I was in hair in a regional theater locally. I played Wolf, and it just I actually realized that I was, the jobs that paid were musicals. So that's kind of how I ended up, really focusing on musicals. And then I went to New York and, would go to auditions and get cast in various tours like The Wizard of Oz or Sleeping Beauty, and regional theaters and theme parks like Hershey Park. Yeah, and just, went down that road for a while.
So when I met you in 1998,
Yeah.
you were the choreographer of a project that I was auditioning for. So how did you get into choreography? Was that one of your first jobs in that role?
No, I had written a show and choreographed it for theater in Vermont, and Hunter, of course, because later on I partnered with him for the Cornerstone Theater. So Cornerstone Productions, I should say. And I was working with him. He and his wife had a company, and I worked with them on and off for about 4 years. And during the course of that time, I started choreographing numbers and writing shows with them, musical numbers as well. And just, I really found like Fosse and a few other choreographers that I really liked, and I would, watch their videos over and over and just pick up whatever I could from it. And, Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, and I would learn some of the choreography step for step. And then, kind of developed it into some of my own stuff. And a lot of the time I would just we'd redo numbers that they did, like you and I did. We did what was it, from Damn Yankees, the Mambo?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So we did, that was pretty much step for step with, from the Fosse, Gwen Verdon choreography from the movie. But yeah, so I did some of that and came up with my own choreography. And so that was in the early to mid 90s, and I had a dinner theater in Mystic that I ran with a friend in the kind of mid to late 90s. Then I met you in 98, I think it was, National Theater of the Performing Arts, and my friend Dan Sarnelli, who had written and was directing the show, and asked me to choreograph it.
So a major chunk of your career was as the co-founder and artistic director of the Cornerstone Productions. So So you mentioned having met Hunter. How did the two of you meet? This Hunter Charno is the other founder, is that right?
Yes. Yep. How did we? I went to an NETC audition. One of I think my last year at Southern, and he saw me there and hired me.
For his Vermont theater that he had.
Vermont theater, yeah.
Then when did the two of you form Cornerstone?
So Cornerstone Productions, we formed in 2000. And we started out doing these small productions in banquet facilities, which you were in some of them. And then, we moved to do things with Foxwood and Mohegan Sun and in Atlantic City, and a lot of other smaller casinos in upstate New York. And we found that Hunter was more of a marketing guy, and I was the theater guy. And we found that we could get, a large audience from bus groups that traveled to casinos, and we would package our shows with the casinos. And for instance, with Foxwood, we brought 13,000 people in that small 1 week period that we did that one show there. The what was it, Connecticut Yankee or Christmas in Connecticut or something like that. Yeah. And we found that we could bring all these people to the casino, and the casino knew that they would all on average lose $67.46. So they knew that they could afford to give us a voucher to each person for a free buffet, some free bet coupons to get them going, and they gave us their giant theater, Fox Theater, for free with the crew and everything. So we did that, and then we started doing the same thing in Atlantic City and Mohegan Sun, and we also used the Guard in New London, which is I think around 1,400 seat theater, and it's situated between Foxwood and the Mohegan Sun, so that they could go to the show first and then take their groups to the casinos, depending on whatever casino they wanted to go to. So we did that until, what was it, 2008, when the economy fell apart.
So when you were running Cornerstone, you were not only artistic and, I would say, managing director as well, but you were also the writer of the shows. You choreographed the shows, you directed the shows, you coordinated all the costumes and the technical abilities for the shows, the sets, the props, all of it. And you'd perform in them.
There were always people that would help me, that we'd hire. I mean, you wrote one of the shows with Stephanie.
Yes, but
right?
I have to say, it's just rare to find somebody who can do all of it, and oftentimes actually would do all of it for a show and star in it and be hilarious and amazing and engaging, and your charisma on the stage is just untouchable. So my question is, when at the times when you were wearing all of the hats, what was your favorite part of it? What was your favorite role?
Probably creating the piece and then seeing it come to life. So I think I was always, by the time we were at that stage, I really wanted to not be on stage. I really wanted more to be behind the scenes, but a lot of the time, just because of the budget, I needed the extra actor, and I knew I could fill a spot, so I would. but I think that we were hiring, equity actors, and, by the time we were at that place, it was too hard to wear that many hats and keep up with everybody else and create choreography in some of the shows, so, I remember struggling with that, but the process of creating the show and seeing it come to life was great. But I think there's a limit to what one person can do, and that's where
Well, you certainly pushed those limits, and you did so gracefully, and you would even move into a new venue and paint the ceilings black and do whatever you needed to do. It was just amazing, absolutely otherworldly.
Yeah.
So then you move on from Cornerstone, and you become the executive director of a nonprofit organization at the Klein in Bridgeport. So what was that like working now? You've been in a for-profit for so long, transitioning into a nonprofit in this leadership role.
It was a lot of fun. I loved being an executive director. My role was, once again, though, wearing a lot of hats. The theater, the Klein, is a 1,400 seat theater. It's the same size as the Schubert here in New Haven, and the Klein is in Bridgeport, or the Guard. But at the when I took over, the Klein was literally closed all the time, except for when somebody rented it out. And an IATSE crew would come in, that's the stagehand union, would come in, open the doors, and there would be somebody who would, hire a bunch of ushers, and, they'd rent the place out with the crew and the ushers and everybody who had to be there. And it might be, a dance company or a recital or something like that, or a rock concert. And then as soon as that was over, the doors would be shut until the next thing happened. There was no box office, Klein box office. There was no development department, none of those things. So when I came in, my skills were unique in that I could wear a lot of hats, and that's why I fit into that position. Because I was doing the director of operations job, I was doing the development job, I was doing until I could hire those people. And I would work with the maintenance people and direct them on what to do as far as fixing up. Oh, that's my dog barking, Sly. On fixing up the theater, and I had to hire a box office staff and direct the fundraising outfit that we had, and look for new board members. So we went from that just being a rental facility to being a fully operating performing arts center in literally 3 years. Yeah, and I was working long hours, 70, 80 hours a week sometimes. So it was very rewarding to do that. But once I got the theater up and running, and it was humming along nicely, the board of directors and all that stuff, it was hard to keep managing everybody at the level that I brought it up to, and I decided I needed a break after all of those hours. So Matt Harrison, who was teaching at Hamden Hall, and said, hey, there's this job opening, the Smiths are leaving, and you would be perfect in that position, and I see you tired all the time, and and you could probably move into a fairly stable, easy position that has a lot less headaches, and it hit just at the right time. And so I moved into teaching, and my teaching experience had been teaching in Betsy Ross Arts Magnet School for a few years as a part-time teacher, and then an adjunct at Quinnipiac. So I had some teaching experience, and I had all this theater experience and building sets and all that stuff. So I figured I would take that and move it to, a school where I could pass it along. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years.
Wow, 5 years. They are so lucky to have you. I mean, as an educator and a leader and
it's a great place to be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's terrific. So, I have you to thank for, everything, but very specifically for Legacy Theater, because I remember, so you and I had worked together as you were the choreographer for that show, and then I went off to Scotland to get my master's, and when I came back, you got in touch and said, hey, I want you to come audition for my company, which was Cornerstone at the time.
Yeah.
So when I went, I met Hunter, your partner, and I went in, to your place where you had the studio, and it might have been a cassette tape, whatever you pressed play on to share with me the show you were currently working on, had this voice come out of it. And the voice that came out of it was this phenomenal, amazing mezzo belter singing this beautiful original song. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm so not worthy. I can't be in this company. They're too good. But that person's voice was Stephanie Stiefel Williams.
Oh, that's
so I heard Stephanie sing at your place before I ever met her. And it was your bringing me into your company that introduced me to her, of course. And then we all worked together for years. And then because of that, and because Cornerstone was finding its conclusion in 2008, it was 3 years later that we were itching to have a venue to perform in again. And so that's when Stephanie and I founded Legacy Theater. So so I have you to thank, and of course you'll always be a part of it in every way that you have time to be a part of it. So it's really neat how things come full circle.
Yeah, they do. And it's always a blast, working with you guys at Legacy. I love that.
Good. Well, thanks for how you do. So you have some talent in your family as well. You are a cousin to Anna Gasteyer.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever perform together growing up, or did you recognize that you both had similar talents?
No, actually. I was, when we would visit them in Washington, D.C., which is where she grew up, I would play with her older brother. And we'd play football together. And at the time, when I was a kid, I didn't really know that or have any inkling that I would be going in that direction. And she was kind of a nerdy kid who played violin. And actually, she played in a quartet with Amy Carter when Jimmy Carter was the president. So that was, we were all like, oh, Anna plays with, Jimmy Carter's daughter. And, that was a big deal back then. So she was always more of a musician, and her mother is an art teacher. And, but we never actually did anything together as artistically, which is surprising, I guess. But but years later, I was visiting their house on the way home from Jacksonville, Florida, where I was in the Navy, to Connecticut. And I stopped there for a few nights, and she was just getting ready to go to Northwestern, or maybe she had already gone, and she had a 4.0 average. And she was doing improv and stuff at Northwestern. And then next thing I know, she was in the Groundlings. I visited her in LA when she was in the Groundlings. So I kind of watched her grow as more of a professional actor. And then when she got into Saturday Night Live, obviously we were all, really happy for her and proud of her. So, and since then it's history. She's done so many amazing things.
That's great. And had a stint playing Elphaba and Wicked somewhat recently. Is that right?
Yeah, 2005 or 2006, I believe. Mm-hmm. It was shortly after the musical came out on Broadway, and they had a company also in Chicago and one in LA. So she was the first Elphaba in Chicago. And she eventually did it in New York City for a while. And then, so, and then I don't think she did it on Broadway for a long time. She took over for somebody, but she was great as Elphaba.
And do you have any other similar talent in your family?
Not
musical at all?
Not well, we have a lot of musical people. Yeah, my mother always sang, and her side of the family, they were all singers. And my father's side, which Anna is on, is all, her mother's an art teacher, and her brother plays piano and sings and does band stuff. Everybody has always played an instrument, piano, but no one else worked professionally, I don't think, besides the two of us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the biz.
Great. And so last question, just about your students. What is it that you enjoy the most about being an educator?
I enjoy watching them come out of their shells and be larger than life. It's always great to have a kid who is afraid to say anything and then find his voice in my class. And that's just a blast to see. As an educator, it's, we don't really think about educating people to become actors, although some of them do. They get the bug and they go on to school for theater. But really the goal is to just get them to come out of their shell and live a little bit larger. And when they do, and most of the time they do, it's really fun to see.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Karl. Thanks for joining us on Face to Face. So great to have you.
Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you for joining us on Face to Face. We would like to thank our sponsors, Oak Tree Development and the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and Brad Ross for the themed music. You can follow us on legacytheaterct.org.